What's up guys, this is Yacineygo and today we're going to be going over the best decks in the current format. There's only 23 of them here just because I'm trying to be as strict as possible. I'm not trying to have like 60 something decks and be way too generous to them and rank them way too high. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one for sure. And also taking into consideration the YCS Bologna that just happened, because Dragon Tail is super popular in Europe, but also it's getting more and more popular in North America. And if you're aware of the existence of Dragon Tail, you would also know that some people are playing decks that are basically just designed to counter Dragon Tail, like Vanquish Soul, for example. And that deck just won YCS Bologna, which makes a lot of sense because it has such a good matchup against it. You're barely activating any spell cards, so Flame is useless. Sting doesn't really do much, and also it's very easy to dodge, the Horn, because you can, tag out with your Vanquish Soul monsters, you can summon your K9s in defense with Jokul and Lantern, etc. So yeah, the matchup is pretty good, and also there are other decks that are pretty much in the same boat. But yeah, before we go any further, y'all, you know the drill, smash the like and subscribe button, really motivates me a lot to keep making videos like these. And with that being said, let's get right into it. So the first deck that I will be ranking will be Mermail. I can rank this deck anywhere between day 2 and top 64 squeeze. Again, there's only 23 decks here, so the simple fact that a deck can make this list, like this video, it already proves that it is a decent deck to some degree. So again, I'm really just being super strict when I'm saying day 2. It technically could get top 64. I really doubt I can get any better just because there's too many Drolls and too many Perlias. If you've seen like side decks from YCS Bologna, you would know basically everybody has at the very least 6 Chummies with 3 Drolls somewhere in their main and or side deck. Sometimes they main deck all 9 of them, which is kind of crazy, but it's also really bad news for Mermail. On the bright side, this deck doesn't have the worst Dragon Tail matchup. It's actually possible to beat the deck going second, because Flame does basically nothing against you. However, Sting is actually really good. If you go like Poseidra, dump like a Dragoons for cost or whatever, your opponent can just chain the Sting, banish the the Dragoons, and then that way like you don't get a search. You can still obviously get a lot of value off of your cards going second, so it's really not the end of the world, but it's not... It's just not like in the best position it's been. And also like the fact that you also have to, play through so many hand traps when you're going first. It's not super ideal. It's not like a board breaker format where you don't care, you're hand looping your opponent, so it's really good if your opponent draws useless cards going second. Now people pretty much always have defensive cards against you. Not the best, but Mermail is still playable. Pyramid Tsurugi, this deck is a meta contender. I wouldn't be shocked to see this deck potentially get, like top 4 again, or top 8 or whatever. It definitely could make sense. I don't really think this deck is good enough to win an event, just because Pyramid Tsurugi just feels a little too fair-ish. Obviously, it does, like, really nasty things. It can Bear Statue lock the opponent, because you can make Dragoluxion using more Akumo, as well as, Habakiri or Futs or whatever, and then you search 7 Tachyon, and then that searches the Water Bear Statue by revealing Ragna 0 or something. So yeah, the deck is good. And, it plays Dominus Impulse, which is the main reason why I'm even talking about these decks. Dominus Impulse just carries, man. It's such a good freaking card. If you can play the card, you already have an advantage by default. But apart from that, I don't really feel like the deck is better than any other deck that is somewhat similar in gameplay. Like Yami Mitsurugi, for example, I already think is better than Pyramid Tsurugi. That could just be me. Maybe you disagree, and that's completely fine. DDD, I think this deck is anywhere between top 64 squeeze and top 32, just because it's still relatively new-ish. People may not really know how to play against the deck. Honestly, even if it was out for a while, it still doesn't change the fact that the cards are still complicated for a lot of people, and even like for the DDD player yourself. So if you're good with the deck, then you can definitely have some good results with it. But unfortunately, in the past like couple of YCSs like Pittsburgh Bologna, we haven't really seen this deck do much of anything. I mean, sometimes like during the Swiss rounds it does really well, but then on day 2 it starts losing a little more, and then it doesn't really top the event, unfortunately. So it's really hard for me to justify this deck being any higher, unfortunately. Memento is a deck that is obviously, capable of getting top 32 or top 64. I think this deck is facing an uphill battle right now, just because it loses super hard to Retelling Sea, and everybody's playing Retelling Sea to counter Dragon Tail, so it is suffering from collateral damage, and I do not really like this too much. Pure K9, this deck obviously plays K9 cards since it is Pure K9, and it plays a lot of hand traps, which is good. It means that the Dragon Tail matchup should be fine, because, K9 cards are great into Dragon Tail, but the deck feels like it sucks into everything else, because, the K9 cards are shit against Yami, so every single time you play against Pure Yami or Yami Mitsurugi, going second, you have a pretty big disadvantage, and you can go first and still lose. That's terrible. In North America, I think this deck is worse, because people have board breakers like Dark Ruler and Droplet, because they anticipate Yami Mitsurugi, whereas in Europe, Dragon Tail is more popular, so a deck like K9, Pure K9 could be a little better. I guess we can say it depends on your region. but I can't really put this deck in here. Honestly, I don't really believe it. I don't think Pure K9 is good enough. Okay, yeah, Malice is definitely a meta contender. I think it's in the top 5 best decks. Honestly, it's getting worse and worse because it's getting more recognition, so people are respecting it more by having Lancia on the side. And if people do have Lancia, you have such a huge disadvantage when you're playing Malice. The good news with this deck is that it can play unfair going first blowouts like D-Fisher, Gravekeeper's Inscription, Different Dimension Ground. Yeah, like Mistaken Arrest. The list goes on, honestly. Like even Deck Lockdown, which is really terrifying. So yeah, Malice going first, it's probably the scariest deck. Going second, it still has Dominus Impulse. Again, like a huge pattern that you can notice with some of these decks, all being able to play Dominus Impulse, therefore being on the list. And that's probably one of the main reasons why I want to respect Malice. And also the fact that Bestials have never been better in a deck like Malice. The Raziel deck, whether it's Raziel Mitsurugi or Onomat Raziel, I think this is like the epitome of a deck that is getting top 32 and probably not any more than that, or maybe top 16 if you have good tiebreakers. But I don't think it's making the playoffs for top 8. I really don't think so. I think it doesn't take much for this deck to just suffer. Like, if your opponent is playing a deck with Chaotic Elements, like a K9 deck, then Chaotic Elements is also a board breaker against you, which is not supposed to be. It's just supposed to be a consistency card. So you start suffering from a lot of that kind of bullshit. And also, again, Jewel and Logbird and Pearly are really popular right now, so you know, it's in the same category as, like, a lot of other decks. But it still plays a really good engine, so, you know, you can definitely make it work. The Despia deck, if you can make it work, then good for you, but I don't really have much to say about it. I do think it's a really good sleeper deck. That's all I can say. But this deck is going to be like a top tier deck when we're going to be getting the new support from Burst Protocol. Without a shadow of a doubt. The new support is unfair. But yeah, right now, maybe not as good as Dragon Tail. Fire King, Jirak or whatever. And this deck was doing decent in Europe before. It does absolutely nothing in North America. Nobody plays it. So maybe I'm going to put it at the very bottom of top 64 squeeze. Or maybe like at the very top of day 2, but yeah, it's just maybe there, maybe there. I don't know, I don't really... It plays Dominus Impulse again, like, come on, you know what, just for that. But now I feel bad for Mermail. That's like down here, and it doesn't really deserve it. I don't really feel like Fire King Jirak is that much better than Mermail, but yo, you can play Fallen Virtuous in this deck. It's actually kind of cool. You can destroy your own like island and then protect it with Sanctuary and then destroy a fire from hand. And then unbrick in situations where your hand kind of sucks. That's cute. But yeah. Anyways, Lunalight. Oh yeah, I mean, this deck can definitely put in some work. For sure, top 16, top 32, maybe top 8. It can get like one top 8 slot. And if it gets top 8, there's a world in which it wins the whole thing. The issue is Dragon Tail are actually really ready for this deck because they play Titanic Cloud to summon off a branded fusion so they can run over one Liger Dancer. And they play so many hand traps that it's easy for them to stop you from making other kinds of Liger Dancers. And again, just like Memento, you're suffering from collateral damage from Dragon Tail existing with people having Retaliating Sea for you. But obviously you can counter Retaliating Sea if you are relying on like Wolf to get you to your first Liger Dancer. That is a possibility. So this deck obviously still has a lot going for it. It's still a really good deck for sure. Even despite everything that I just said. And you can also play around Droll and stuff like that. Perilia doesn't do much. You only give 4 draws to Fua, but at least you're making Liger Dancer, and if your opponent doesn't have an out, it is what it is. But yeah, you are suffering from, I mean, Mitsurugi having a searchable Kaiju and Malice having a lot of searchable, I mean, in-engine ways to deal with Liger Dancer. So the best decks, usually they don't struggle too much to Liger Dancer. The Orcus deck, I think, is actually really good. You can play Dominus Impulse again, which is good. You can play Orcus K9. There's basically no real confliction with Impulse, a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. It's really just Izuna as well as Noroi and Lupus. If you're playing Noroi, some people are now playing Noroi. Or you can play Orcus Mitsurugi, which is also very good. There's no bridge between both, I believe. Not anymore, which kind of sucks. Before it was like King of the Feral Imps. And obviously there's no Orcus Mermaid, so it is what it is. But still a really good deck, for sure. Fiendsmith-based decks, I think they can get top 64 and nothing more than that. So I'm probably just going to place like those decks in general here. White Forest is like for sure a deck that just get top 64, top 32 and then dies. So maybe here. Sky Striker, maybe just a little better. Because I wouldn't be shocked to see this deck randomly one day getting top 8 and then not winning the YCS. If this deck ever wins a YCS, I will be extremely surprised. And I think a lot of people will. But it's a decent deck. You know, I can play Heatwave, which is nice. It's really broken if you draw it. you know, because you can summon a lot, you can search a lot, you can draw and search on the draw phase to beat Drill and Logbird. So that's really nice. The Radiant Typhoon cards definitely helped this deck a lot. And speaking of Radiant Typhoon, this deck right now is going to be joining Mermail in the D2, but not getting top 64 at all section, just because it's really tough for a deck like Radiant Typhoon in a format that is way too aggressive. But when we're going to be getting the new support from Burst Protocol, maybe this deck is going to be getting like here or here. For sure, I think so. It's just that in the TCG, control decks usually do a little worse than in the OCG, because obviously Maxi is a thing. But yeah, it's a cool deck. Maybe Runic can work in it. I'm not sure. Gem Knight, yeah, it's probably here. It's a very good deck. Going second, you OTK your opponent in 2 seconds. And going first, I mean, you can Christia your opponent. It's just that if you're forced to go first on game 1, yeah, you're screwed. Yeah, you can also Shadows with Reprodocus. You can do a lot of things. Shadows, Christia, maybe Ibly Lock. You've got options. You got options. It's not too bad, for sure. Blue Eyes, I cannot see this deck getting top 64. I think it stops at day 2 and that's it. I think Mermail is probably the better deck here, and then Blue Eyes maybe, and then Radiant Typhoon. Yeah, I don't think this deck has enough, you know, ceiling, and it plays too many bricks for a 40 card deck. Way too much. Vanquish Soul. Yeah, I mean, this deck just won YCS Bologna, so it'd be delusional to believe that this deck is not capable of doing it again. Is extremely good, but a deck that I think is kind of a fluke is the Odeon deck. I don't really think this deck is ever winning a single thing again, and I don't really think this deck can even squeeze in top 64 unless it's like your day, but I think I'm probably just gonna place it here. It's still a good deck. Maybe like interchangeable with this, maybe, or interchangeable with Fire King and DDD and Fiendsmith, maybe, I'm not sure. It just, I don't know, man. Things have to go like your way for a deck like this to work, really. It's just, if you don't draw like very good, because it's not even that consistent, really. You don't even play that many starters. I've not really been satisfied playing this deck myself. Crystron K9. Oh, this is a good one. I definitely do believe that it's a meta contender, and it's not just because I'm saying it, just because I think right now it's a good meta call because it's very good against Dragon Tail, and there's less Yummy Mitsurugi. I mean, Yummy Mitsurugi isn't even that bad because you're playing Izuna, but pure Yummy is not the best matchup for this deck, and there's less pure Yummy right now, so that's good. And you don't really care about Artifact Lancia if you get hit by Lancia, so again, the collateral damage, it's not the end of the world. And if people play Board Breakers, then you're insta-winning because Spell Canceller is broken. So yeah, I think Crystron is cool for sure. And yeah, I mean, I keep doing well-ish with the deck, but just not well enough. But don't worry, next time I will win a YCS with Crystron. Mark my words, I will become a Hokage. Dragon Tail, yeah, obviously that's you know, that's a first place contender deck. It's really good. It already won a YCS, or 2 YCSs. Yeah, YCS. Hold on a second. Sao Paulo as well as Pittsburgh. So this is Yummy, pure Yummy or Yummy Mitsurugi, and then there's a Sulfa Cord Yummy after that. I think Yummy Mitsurugi is a deck that can win the YCS because it keeps getting in like the finals or top 4. But I think it's hard for this deck to win just because if it plays like a Dragon Tail in the finals, sorry, Dragon Tail is here, it most likely loses because the matchup is bad. You need a lot of non-engine to beat it. But if you go first with this deck and you win the dice roll in the finals, then you're also probably winning. So, you know, every deck that is in here can win a YCS, basically is what I'm trying to say. And then Sulfa Cord Yummy, it's probably my favorite version of the Yummy deck. So I also want to believe that it's a champion deck, but not a lot of people play it. Even less people play Sulfa Cord Yummy than like Malice and stuff like that. So I'm probably gonna have to place it here just because of, you know, representation and conversion rates. But logically speaking, this makes a little more sense. And yeah, I mean, when you just look at sheer numbers, it's always going to be Dragon Tail number 1, Mitsurugi Yummy number 2, and then number 3, I don't know, maybe like Malice or something like that, depending on your region. Vanquish Soul is seeing way more numbers than before, especially on day 2, like the conversion. Vanquish Soul becomes like in the top 4 most played decks. And then, you know, some other decks like Mitsurugi based decks, etc. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know how you feel about, you know, the best decks in the TCG right now. I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.